I think this is a incredibly risky bet by Seattle because essentially they're betting that exchange is going to work out for them and get them out of purgatory. Chris, I am very skeptical of that. And I like Darnold. I want to be clear. But this is not a good situation for him.
Welcome to the Greenlight Podcast presented by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code GREENLIGHT and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code GREENLIGHT. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. If that bet loses, you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just make sure you use bonus code GREENLIGHT when you sign up. All right, she's back. She's back, ladies and gentlemen. One of the busiest people in sports media this week. She's doing a lot of Aaron Rodgers segments. She's trying to keep us up to speed on what he's thinking, among others. Her name is Mina Kimes, and she joins me now on the Greenlight Pod.
What's up? What's another Aaron Rodgers segment? I told you I hope the news breaks while we're taping so we can at least get some juice out of it.
Before we get into this, and we'll give him a little bit of time to decide so that we can break the news, I want to ask you about Celebrity Jeopardy. What's up with that? I don't watch television. My parents had the Voice on last night, and I was like, what the fuck is this? I don't watch it. What is this show? I don't watch any TV. So you got to tell me what's going on, soup to nuts, with you and Celebrity Jeopardy. This isn't like you asked me to plug this. I'm really curious.
Well, really quick on The Voice. I don't watch those shows either, but my parents do. It's like ultimate parent fodder, right? And I went home once. I think this was like, the show's been on forever. This must have been like 10 years ago. And this is so my dad. I found a yellow legal pad where my dad was taking notes on all of the singers and writing down his thoughts.
Oh.
Voice.
Yo. Your dad has one up my dad.
My dad has like a stack like 3 feet high of yellow legal pads that he buys in bulk and just uses to do everything. I guess which might explain I don't know about this season, but he's had some strong takes in the past. Yeah, Jeopardy. I was really nervous, dude, because just a million reasons, but I felt like a lot of pressure to not look like an idiot. Yeah. And also the questions of Celebrity Jeopardy are like easy. So you feel it weirdly creates extra pressure because you feel dumb. What people don't understand though, and I guess people saw me freaking out about this, it's really hard to buzz in. And that's actually half the battle on the show. It's not about the questions, it's about the buzzer.
What makes the buzzer difficult?
You have to buzz in like a tiny window. And if you buzz in too early, it locks you out. And then you want to beat everybody. So it's kind of like video games, right? It's like playing Wii or something, which I don't play video games, so I don't have like that hand-eye coordination, I feel like.
Did it air already?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
All right. So did you win or lose? I'll deal with the spoilers. Just did you win or lose?
I did win. Yeah, I won the first round. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't know if this is a big deal or not. Feels like a big deal. Ask me a question like a world geography question that like one that if I get it wrong, I'm not going to feel stupid, but one that's like Jeopardy class.
Okay. Well, there's Celebrity Jeopardy class and there's regular Jeopardy class, but
shit. So Celebrity Jeopardy is like it's a little
dumber. I can ask you a geography question that was on my episode last night.
Okay. Hit me.
Let me make sure if I got I don't remember the exact wording of it, but basically the gist of it was, do you know the name of a river in India that is sacred? It's like considered to be a holy river. It was a little tricky, I guess, for geography.
Yeah, what is outside my wheelhouse? I can't do that.
You know Africa. Right? You know
I'm not real. I'm not. See, it's not that easy to be on Celebrity Jeopardy, man. You're giving yourself not enough credit. Well, that's good. So you were a little bit nervous, but you won round one. When are we going to see you again on Celebrity Jeopardy?
The semifinals, I am told, air in mid-April. So I don't know the exact date yet.
How do you study?
I actually bought, I don't know, it's right there. This book. Do you remember Brain Quest? Did you ever do those growing up? Where like the trivia with like the little flip cards?
Obviously not.
Yeah, we might have had slightly different paths. So they make these like books of like facts. So I bought a book of U.S. historical facts and just studied and read it. It's like for junior high students. It actually was quite helpful,
Dude,
to be honest.
I'm into that. So I might cop a one of those books there, and I don't know if I qualify as a celebrity, but one day I'm gonna try to get on Jeopardy and
definitely more of a celebrity than I am.
Beat your record. All right, cool. So people want to hear all about free agency. It's like the coolest thing in the world, I guess, because it's the only thing on TV or on ESPN.com. How do we start? I guess let's start with Aaron Rodgers. Does Aaron Rodgers make somebody better at this point?
That's a great way of phrasing it. I think yes, because there's a few teams that have no quarterbacks. So, like the best quarterback in the Giants roster right now is Tommy DeVito. So yes, Aaron Rodgers makes them better. He also, I think, would be an improvement upon last year as well. I think you could argue the same for the Steelers, although I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because Dio and I got into it a little bit on NFL Live. Like on one hand, Rodgers to the Steelers makes sense. They're the most linked together teams. And you kind of understand why they'd be a little bit loath to just run it back with Russ. On the other hand, to me, Aaron Rodgers playing with DK Metcalf and George Pickens is like a toxic fever dream. Like I don't like. Am I crazy for thinking that he will lose his shit within like 2 quarters of playing with those dudes?
Dude, I have the pictures in my head of them on the sideline arguing over a tablet.
Yeah.
Like already, it's I'm not really sure how that goes wrong, but I don't know. My first reaction when I saw that they traded for DK was, I'm not saying it's redundant. They're 2 deep threat guys. They're 2 home run ball guys. I think one has like, I'm not going to compare the 2 players exactly because one I think has like incredible ball skills and, like his late hands are as good as anybody in the NFL. The other guy's just a big bully out there. And I don't mean to be reductive. He doesn't have the whole route tree. He's just a big overpowering force, but neither guy has been able to, it seems like, kind of keep their shit together on the sideline, not to put it too bluntly. And I think that at least is part of the factor why in Seattle they wanted to just start over and let JSN be the lead dog in that room.
By Steelers standards, though, DK is like the most normal wide receiver that they've ever had, though.
And he's also going to look like the scariest wide receiver they ever had in that uniform. Like, can you imagine him with a dark visor, all of 6'6" or whatever he is, built the way he is in that black and gold uniform? I think it's good. Like, listen, the ceiling on these 2 moves. Now you got to remember, you got to round out that wide receiver core with guys like Calvin Austin, speedier guys who can actually run routes and that sort of thing. The ceiling on this move is great. Then you add Aaron Rodgers, and yeah, like the ceiling on Aaron Rodgers, even at this age, is still pretty high. Like I saw him last year at times make throws that I said, wow, like he's still Aaron Rodgers. So all the football, if you can just keep the football, I mean, this could be an improvement for them. But we both know that over the past couple of years, it's been a bit of a shit show dealing with Aaron Rodgers. And I didn't bring that on him. Like the media didn't bring that on him. He brought that on him. And so like, I hate to have to say this and bake it into my analysis of a great football player, but that's a reality. And in Pittsburgh, it almost feels like Tomlin loves these challenges, man. Like, I don't know what it is in Tomlin's DNA where he's like, yeah, let me put together the most potentially toxic situation and try to surf this wave. And I think if anybody can, it's him. But if I were him, I would say, number one, Aaron, I need you at everything. We have to build a rapport with this group. Talking about bringing in a new wide receiver who we gave up a top 100 pick for and he's got to work well with George Pickens, who, by the way, needs to take the next step in his development. And we got to get this offense on the same page. And we, like you think some destinations would be too big an opportunity in NFL terms to act like shitty. Like the Jets seem to be like, Jets are too small a deal. It's too poor of an organization from the way it's run. The recent history is too garbage that you would walk into that building and feel the respect that I think it would necessitate Aaron Rodgers like doing the right thing and saying the right thing every day. Does that make sense? I'm hoping that if he ends up in Pittsburgh, he would say, hey, like, this is the Rooneys, this is Mike Tomlin, missing mandatory mini camp or whatever it is, or throwing players under the bus or pouting, like that stuff it's off the table. This is the Steelers. That's the only way this works. And that's a big presumption that it's going to work out that way.
Well, we say that, but the Steelers certainly have had tolerance for a lot of players who do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Over the last few years. I guess I want to be clear too on Rodgers in Pittsburgh. When I kind of joked about him and those receivers, like I'm specifically talking about football stuff. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is harder on his receivers than maybe any quarterback in the league. How many times have we seen shots of him throwing up his hands in frustration when a guy runs the wrong route or doesn't understand his hand signals or whatever? DK Metcalf and George Pickens are both incredibly talented receivers. Technicians, they are not. So I just feel like that is a bit of recipe for disaster, or at least some toxicity. And then the other thing, like, Chris, like, it's a weird scheme fit, right? Arthur Smith is still the play caller. We know he wants to run that under center play action. Rodgers kind of wants to sit in the gun and read things out, get rid of the ball quickly. I think they have to improve the offensive line there. If they were signing him, the run game wasn't that good last year. So I don't know. The issue is there's no other alternatives. So we can like talk about this, but like what other paths do they realistically have?
Well, they have the path of ripping off the Band-Aid, and like teams that are in purgatory for a long time need to decide at some point, like, do we want to stay here, or, do we want to start the process? And I know for like Steelers fans, that's not very exciting, especially when you've won 8 games famously for a very long time. I do think they're one of the most purgatory teams in the NFL because in recent years, at times they've had a really good defense, and that very anemic passing attack you've been able to survive it, even with, bad offensive coordinating, and eventually last year, kind of a carousel at quarterback and the pump fake with Russell Wilson, like, oh, he's the old Russ. No, he's just the new Russ. Like, I think at some point, these teams that play veteran quarterback roulette have to sit down, like Indy, and they tried to do it with Anthony Richardson and say, like, we're going to do something different. But the Steelers aren't in a position to draft a guy like that. So I don't know what they do. And honestly, I think for a team to want Aaron Rodgers, number one, he'd have to be bought in. But number two, like all the things that you just mentioned wouldn't be issues. Like for me, he just came from the Jets where the offensive line was an issue. People said he didn't have enough weapons, even though he had 2 good backs, Garrett Wilson, and he handpicked a lot of the players on that roster offensively. Like, so now you're talking about Pittsburgh where you've got these 2 high ceiling wide receivers who I was the first guy on the damn soapbox talking about. I was on the soapbox and pounding the table for George Pickens. I was doing both those things at the same time about he could be a Hall of Famer. People laughed at me. Now the joke is on anybody who doesn't see the potential or the tragedy and the fact that he can't keep his shit together. So like I don't know what you make of Pittsburgh, but to me, it just feels like they're a team that keeps throwing different things at the wall and hoping they stick. And also when you look at the defense, I don't think the defense is in the shape it has traditionally been in to carry like a situation where the offense is hot and cold.
Yeah, that was like, I feel like their playoff loss, it got kind of slept on how bad the defense was in that game.
Terrible.
Because we were also dialed into the quarterback and Russ, who actually had a few pretty decent drives against the Ravens. But the defense was awful in that game. And yeah, I don't think they're good enough to carry a mid quarterback anymore. By the way, I'm right there with you on Pickens. Can I say that? Like that dude, I think has as much talent as any receiver in the NFL. Some of the catches he makes, I don't think count on one hand the number of guys who are even close to making those catches. But I don't know about this pairing. I'll throw out the possibility they might trade him too. I do wonder if they do this DK contract thinking they're sick of it and they want to see if they can get decent draft pick for him, because it does feel a little bit redundant. They're different players, but it's a little redundant.
Yeah, and I didn't want to overly boil them down. Like, I think it's a compliment to them that they're redundant. I mean, they're both home run hitters, scary for defenses to prepare for. But I think what you said, like the scheme fit to me, is also a question. Like, listen, Rodgers is maybe, some of the parts mid quarterback at this point. But like, if you can get him doing what he does best, he can still be really, really good. But it takes a lot to do that. And I don't know that in Arthur's offense, without changing some things, as you alluded to, you're going to get that. And so it does feel kind of like a Band-Aid. And I just don't feel like the Steelers have traditionally been a Band-Aid franchise. Like, and in this era, it feels like they're a Band-Aid franchise where every year they're trying to figure out something different to do. And, like they got the Steelers logo on the helmet, but it kind of feels like the Colts. It's like since Ben Roethlisberger fell off the face of the earth, like they really haven't found their footing.
That's why I kind of like respect what the Jets did this offseason, because not that they had that many choices, but like I kind of like it when a team recognizes they're not actually that competitive and they're not going to try to get a Band-Aid like quarterback, take a flyer on Fields. It's basically a 1-year deal. Sit out this draft. Let's not reach for a guy. I know it can be hard for fans to stomach that, but at least it keeps you out of what you're describing, which is this endless purgatory.
Yeah. And listen, the Fields thing again is like, there's still part of me that believes in him, and the reality is I'm sitting here, thumbing my nose at the Rodgers thing. And some people are going to be like, that's Aaron Rodgers. And you're sitting here caping for Justin Fields. Well, there's a difference. Justin Fields is younger by a whole lot. And honestly, I still see some skills in his body that are differentiating. And if you can just get him to process quicker, which it's so easy, the heavy lifting is the word just in that sentence. But like, we've seen it before where guys make jumps. And I think everybody's banking on somebody with the talent that he has to make that jump. I also think for Justin Fields, I want to point this out, last year in Pittsburgh, I thought he took his medicine, not for nothing, and showed class in a situation where as a competitor, I'm sure he wanted that job and did everything he could to be a good teammate. I agreed with Pittsburgh's move to go to Russ, because of, I think like the Raiders game is a perfect example where everybody's like, well, they won the game, but did you watch the game? They missed so many opportunities. And I think for him to keep that job in New York, he's going to have to make the most of those opportunities. I think they'll be out there. He reunites with Garrett Wilson. He's got some good backs in the backfield. I love Aaron Glenn. He gained a lot of my respect over the last couple of years as a coordinator. Obviously, I didn't know as much about him as a coach. But last year, the job he did in Detroit was amazing. So I'm pulling for the Jets. And as a Justin Fields fan, like a truther, lowercase t at this point, like I'm still hoping that he turns that corner. But to your point, that ain't taking a big swing.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for them.
Yeah, me too.
I was going to ask you about the AFC East, and like it kind of feels like Buffalo gained a lot of confidence last year, and like, hey, we don't need to put the pedal to the metal to win. Like we've realized what we have at quarterback. We love the coordinator. He didn't get plucked this year. Huge. Defense has to get better. Like they've made some under the radar moves. Are there any that you really like? Bosa is the splashy move.
I liked, we'll see. It's hard to bet on Joey Bosa giving you a ton of games at this point in his career. Obviously, it's just a 1-year deal. I love that they paid their own guys and kept everyone on pretty reasonable contracts. I mean, this is such a boring take, but like all the deals that I liked were the ones teams did with their own players. Like the Ravens with Ronnie Stanley, I thought was the steal of free agency. Also, you keep him out of the Chiefs' hands, by the way. And then the same thing, the Bills paying Gregory Rousseau. Like that contract is going to be about $20 million a year. And I think that's a great piece of business for Buffalo.
I agree.
He's never going to be, one of those dudes in the NFL. Yeah. Like he's not a top 10, 15 edge rusher, but he's tremendous against the run. He's just super solid. So if they can get any juice out of Bosa and maybe a young player opposite him, I think that's going to look like a really great signing by next year, especially.
I agree on the Rousseau re-sign. That has to get better, right? Like, and as we parse Josh's legacy, Patrick's legacy, you saw what happened to the Chiefs the very next week. Like, those two quarterbacks played against very different defenses in that game. The Bills cannot continue to go to bat against Patrick Mahomes with defenses like this and expect to eventually pull the sword from the stone. It's not going to happen with the secondary that they trotted out there and the pass rush that they had. So I think the Joey Bosa thing has to work out. But I think he's played in I don't know how many snaps over the last 3 years. I think I read 1,000 snaps. So you have to have him available. I do love the Josh Palmer signing.
Really?
I do. I feel like I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those things we look at in a year and we're like, wow, that was a steal. I don't think he fully realized his potential in LA. I'm coming around on the fact that Herbert has some growing up to do. As much as I think he's fantastic, I didn't love that offense last year. I didn't know who they were from 1 month to the next. Eventually they settled into being like this pass happy group, but I don't feel like Palmer got the work he'll get in that offense. And I think what's also awesome is he gets open. Like, he's one of the best separators when you look at kind of the metrics and all that next level stats that everybody's into. Like, I was reading about he's one of the best separators in the NFL. And so I think he can be a really solid number 2 for them.
I think he's a really solid number 2 or high end 3. My issue with Buffalo is just they got a bunch of those now. Not that there was one available for them, but I really want them to add some speed to that receiving group. Maybe they'll do something in the draft. They're kind of like a whole team of good players, right? Mm-hmm. You got Josh Allen, and you got a bunch of just really good players. Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Khalil Shakir. But on both sides of the ball, it feels like they need a real difference maker, and they're kind of missing that on both sides.
See, I think that they're missing it mostly on defense, in my opinion. I think they have enough to beat the big boys with what they have offensively because they can run the ball. Because
Cook is a difference maker. I want to say that. I wasn't thinking of him. I think he is a difference
maker.
James Cook.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Kincaid before that drop was and he still is a difference maker as a receiving tight end. I think they've looked at it from a different standpoint, which is hey, depth can get it done. Spreading the ball around can get it done. And as long as we have a run game and the job that they've done up front, the big difference maker, they just paid him $300 million, right? And so they have the luxury to do that offensively. They straight up just don't have the luxury to do that defensively. So to your point, I feel like that's where they really need to invest in, whether it's through the draft or free agency, somebody that makes a difference. But if you look around the AFC East, there's nobody that really the Patriots kind of scare me in a matchup standpoint. From a matchup standpoint, you saw how much trouble they gave them in the second game of the season. And with sneaky signings like Carlton Davis, you talk about corner with length, who will help in that matchup. Milton Williams, they're racking up Vrabel guys. You worry about playing the Patriots, but there's nobody in that division that makes me worried about unseating them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think especially with Miami going the way they are, having to shed players is kind of always going to happen, right? With their cap. The Jets are obviously rebuilding. The Patriots, what are your thoughts? Because I really liked the focus on defense, which was bad and injured last year. But God, help break out a little bit. I know they tried with Godwin, and I guess he turned them down. I don't know the exact reporting on that. And I know also there weren't many other than DK. There weren't many options in free agency. But I really hope they can find a receiver for him, because they signed a Morgan Moses to play right tackle. I just feel offensively they kind of didn't do a lot, didn't do enough.
Especially because, hey, I would think Vrabel's chasing that difference-making receiver ever since they lost A.J. Brown and the way they lost A.J. Brown. Like,
Good point.
I feel like that's got to be definitely a sore subject, and I don't know what they have up their sleeve. But to your point, like they're gonna have to grab somebody and I'm super impressed with Drake. I really like Drake May and had a chance to sit down with him at the Super Bowl and loved him. But
isn't he just like a golden retriever?
He's great.
Like
he's like
so sweet.
But he's a dude. Like he's a guy you
cool.
can imagine playing football with. Like not like a quarterback who's off in his section.
No,
he struck me as like a football player, which was cool.
Yeah. Well, he plays like a football. I mean, I think people are sleeping on how impactful he was as a runner last year because it was pretty impressive, and his size. I mean, it is pretty Josh Allen like. Honestly,
he's a big cat.
Team was he's big, he's fast,
yeah,
he's willing. But yeah, they got to help him out. Here's a question for you, Patriots. You're picking at 4. There's a run on quarterbacks. Let's say Carter's off the board. Do you take Hunter and play him at wide receiver?
I don't. I think Hunter. I'm no draft expert, but in talking to the people that I trust, like I'm just not a big believer in like guy playing both ways. You know, it's hard enough to make that transition as a high pick in the NFL, like to adjust to the speed of the game and the whole thing. And he shouldn't have a lot of trouble because he's such a damn good athlete. But I think he's so differentiating on the defensive side of the football. Like I think his abilities are really differentiating on that side of the football.
That's what I've been saying. Like I got some heat for saying this, but I was like, this dude could be an all-pro corner in like 2 years, like because of his ball skills. But if you bring him to New England, he's instantly the best receiver on the roster.
He could be.
So like the receiving coach is going to be looking at him over practicing with the DBs being like, please let us borrow this dude.
He could be, but like how does borrowing work out? Like then do you stunt his development as a corner? And then,
I know that's what's tricky.
And how if the borrowing's going really well, then he just stays there. But you know, I if I drafted him, hey, I might have him running some drills and seeing what he's got and that sort of thing, and maybe throwing a package for him. But I don't know what you do there. All right, so let's move out west. I want to get you going here. Geno, you were really hurt by this whole thing. Tell me why.
Here's my issue with this. Because what they did is in a vacuum defensible. Basically, they said, Seattle, we don't want to be in purgatory, the kind of purgatory you and I have been talking about. Because they've kind of been there for the last few years, right? So we're going to move on from the quarterback, and because we don't want to pay him, so we want to pay a little bit less. And we want to accumulate a draft pick. It was a 3rd rounder, so okay. And let's take a swing. But my issue is they didn't take a swing, right? And it wasn't a draft where I think that was defensible. Instead, they just paid a different quarterback slightly less, who I think is going to struggle in an ecosystem that's dramatically worse than the one he's leaving. And I would say dramatically right now, especially after trading Metcalf.
Yeah.
You got JSN. You got arguably one of the worst interior offensive lines in football. And I know he was dealing with some pretty sus pass protection. And by the way, you have a pretty unproven play caller in Clint Kubiak. Everybody keeps saying, oh, Clint Kubiak's going to be the same offense. Kevin O'Connell is one of the best play callers in the NFL,
Agreed.
like top 5 to me. So I think this is a incredibly risky bet by Seattle. Because essentially they're betting that exchange is going to work out for them and get them out of purgatory. Chris, I am very skeptical of that. And I like Darnold. I want to be clear. But this is not a good situation for him.
Well, the only thing I can think of is, well, number one, like the place where I think you and I disagree is like keeping him. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I gather you think keeping him would have helped. I don't know what that would have cost. Like,
we don't know yet, right? Because we haven't seen his deal with the Raiders.
Yeah, and I think paying a 33, 34-year-old Geno, who I like Geno, and I have definitely got a soft spot for a guy who got cast aside and then had to climb back into it. And I've rooted for him. And we all see the highs. The highs are really high, but then the lows are like these red zone turnovers where at times they have nothing to do with the protection. And I understand like the protection can be a compounding factor, and eventually you see ghosts. Speaking of the successor to Geno. But like, I do think they were hitting a ceiling with the group
Yeah.
and with him. And that's not to say I don't think Geno can elevate Vegas. Like, who knows? Maybe the ceiling's higher in Vegas. I think sometimes you need a change, right? So I don't think it's too controversial to say, hey, we're gonna hit the reset button. To your point, you are kind of doing the bridgey thing again, right? Like the bridge plus thing again. Like, we'll see. Maybe he can turn into the next Geno, right? But the character arc on him at the end of last season with Geno-like protection was yikes. The only thing I can say is Clint Kubiak will at least try to run the football. Not that they ever gave Geno that luxury, right? He'll at least try to run the football. They might emphasize the run game, getting on the edge, play action pass. They might mitigate some of these protection issues. The questions I have, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, is like, he's walking into a shitty situation. So you're paying a guy, and I like Sam, and I'm pulling for Sam, and I think he can be a guy. But you're paying a guy who had 1 year in a very good setup, and this setup is worse. So there's a lot of proving it out to do. I just don't know that they were really going anywhere with Geno, in my opinion, other than 10 wins, maybe one playoff win. Like, I don't know that either of these guys, to me, feels like hey, you can go win a Super Bowl with this guy.
I think that's my issue here. It's like, I get it, the need to shake it up a little bit, but this is just not the right time. And they didn't, I think, in a way that I would characterize as a high upside swing. If they had paired this move with like somehow really improving the interior of the offensive line, I would feel a lot better about it. They've done jack all there. They have been in on some of the guards, and they haven't signed anyone. I'm just, Sam Darnold, God love him, is a pressure sensitive quarterback. And we saw that at the end of the season. And this is, I'm worried for him. I'm almost like Sam, like, really? Like, why? You know, I don't know how many options.
Hey, what did Shannon say? For $50 million, I'd go to hell. Which,
that was my reaction to the Garrett news. People were like, wow, I guess winning doesn't matter. I'm like, the things I would do for that contract.
Yeah.
You could make me like broadcast out of, I don't know. I don't want to offend any city. I was going to say a city, but the worst city in America.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Although I'm a little bit more bullish on Sam, I guess, because I just don't want to do a 180. I thought that ironically he played one of his best games in Seattle and this past season. Yeah. And it was, I think it was on the heels of them. Remember they wore all white and played Chicago in primetime, and he struggled a little bit. And towards the end of the season, you saw some of the veneer kind of coming off him. And a lot of it was the protection and that sort of thing. But I also didn't think Kevin had his best December and January. And and I love Kev.
Playoff game, I thought it really was. He shared some of the responsibility.
No question. And so, like, listen, that reality came down on them fast. I mean, they lost Darisaw on a freaking kneel down play at the end of the half. Should have been a kneel down play, but they were so backed up on their goal line they couldn't just kneel down. So they ran the ball and he got hurt. And I thought that's when it really started to snowball for them. Long story short, I'm not saying I hate the move for Sam Darnold. I'm not saying Geno's terrible. I'm just saying we're both kind of scratching our heads a little bit about, like, one for one. It's a little bit the same. Right. One's cheaper. And it's a little bit more of an unknown commodity with Sam. Geno's been doing this a couple years in Seattle. So
yeah, I mean, I think John Schneider, frankly, the GM of the Seahawks, got lucky with Geno Smith. I think when they did the Russell Wilson trade, they thought Drew Lock was going to be the quarterback, and then they lucked into this like unbelievable comeback story. And this is him kind of cashing in on that win in some ways, right? I mean, Schneider has been on an absolute heater when it comes to value, like to go from a quarterback in the third round of Russell Wilson for years, who was amazing, to a quarterback who was a reclamation project who dramatically played better than expected. Like he's stacked up W's. And I feel like this is him putting a lot of dip on his chip, saying, all right, I'm going to do it again. Like in a manner of speaking, I'm going to make another QB bet. I'm skeptical, but obviously as a fan, I hope it works out.
Yeah, no question. If it goes terribly, then you're not in purgatory anymore. I guess that's a positive. But I'll just say this. One of my favorite players in the league just signed with y'all, DeMarcus Lawrence.
Oh, yeah.
Super excited about that for y'all. and a guy that was an absolute fixture in Dallas, just ass kicker in both parts of the game.
I'm excited for Mafe to learn from him because they actually have a decent amount in common.
Yeah. Well, Mafe's got to get in that damn weight room a little bit before, because that DeMarcus Lawrence, I don't know if anybody bullies tight ends better.
Is he the best run defending edge of our generation? Is that overstating it?
He might be, because there's somebody that doesn't have enough pass rush to get on the map, right? Like I play with a guy like William Hayes. Like William Hayes was ridiculous. Okay. Like I played with a couple guys like that were just like, but in the category of elite pass rushers, which
Clowney at his peak, I would put in there.
Yeah. At different moments, I thought when he was like an elite pass rusher, you can call him the best majorly relevant edge player in the run game. Like he was so dominant, and he wasn't a pick aside guy. He wasn't a run around a block guy. He was like, I'm gonna run down your shit, and I just big fan of his. So I also think McDonald has the defense. Like once y'all got the linebacker thing humming last year, he saw that, okay, I can build this thing out. I think part of this is giving the keys to Kubiak and saying, hey, all right, I'll take the defense. You want to hit the reset button. That's another thing. Like JSN, I think, is good enough to be a 1, but they can't just have it be JSN and the guys they have now. So
there's just so many needs on offense. I love directionally what they're doing on defense. I trust McDonald's judgment when it comes to personnel at this point. They were cycling through linebackers last year until they hit on Ernest Jones, safeties as well. Defense definitely trending up, but offensively, you need IOL, you need another receiver, you need a tight end I would throw into the mix. There's so many needs, and I'm just skeptical of the plan on that side of the ball. But defensively, I am very optimistic about where things are going in Seattle.
Where are we placing Cooper Kupp? Another NFC West topic. Is it Seattle?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Wide receiver who can block. They don't have anyone like that. Right. Seattle, I would throw out Chargers.
Right. Don't have to leave LA.
Places that love receivers who can block. Maybe Denver? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Honestly, and I don't know how much we should be talking about it respectfully. Cooper Kupp was an incredible player. 2021 was incredible. And I also think age factors in, and just a regression to the mean a little bit. And if nobody loves Cooper Kupp more than Matt Stafford and freaking Sean McVay. So the fact that they're saying no thanks at this point, but he's going to have an opportunity to revive his career and finish on a high note. I think people have a lot of respect for him, and it'd be fun to see him in Seattle or in LA with the Chargers. The one thing, did I see this? I've missed a lot of things this week. Did Najee Harris sign with the Chargers?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Oh,
1-year deal.
Interesting. Interesting.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you see Trent Sieg signed with the Cowboys day one of? He's a long snapper. They locked him up. They didn't waste any time.
They made, I thought, a very puzzling decision in terms of running backs. They let Rico Dowdle walk and then signed Javonte Williams, and Dowdle got a similar contract with Carolina. I think Dowdle was sneaky good back.
Dowdle's pretty good. Season. Dowdle's pretty good. I didn't really understand that. What do you think the Cowboys, internally, take a stab at it? What do you think they say? The Joneses sitting around their big star-shaped dinner table. What are they trying to fuck it up? I don't mean that. I mean that respectfully. They know people have this reputation of them in free agency, and they continue to do the same thing.
Well, the thing that is so objectionable to me is not that they're not going out and spending a ton of money or over leveraging themselves. It's the procrastination aspect that is insane, right? With Micah and just letting other deals pile up. And this is, like you said, it's what they've been doing for years. Sometimes old people have a certain way of doing things and don't depart from it. That's the only explanation I can come up with, because there's the Micah one. Maybe there's either you're going to sign him or you're not. So why not get it done earlier. It makes no sense to me.
It's almost like you're not doing it because somebody told you to do it. You're like, no, I'm going to make you wait. And then I'm going to spend even more money and screw my team over even more. Like Cincinnati's an example of this. You know, there's a few teams in the NFL right now that seem to be in this.
Those two teams have been really screwing this up when it comes to waiting too long to get these deals done. I am learning what you're describing, though. I am learning now as my kid is a toddler how to harness that for manipulation, which is I'm like, oh, you don't want to eat this, you don't want. He's like, yes, I do, and he'll eat something.
Oh yeah,
it's like the most powerful manipulation tactic.
Hey Jerry, we've decided as an organization we shouldn't pay Micah Parsons. You're not allowed.
Like hell.
Like hell, we'll give him $100 million a year right now. All right, but yeah, it's tough because they might be the most purgatory team in the NFL. Dallas literally might be one of the most purgatory teams in the NFL now, because it's really hard to imagine them getting a lot better.
This would be a great rankings, by the way, because we're always doing power rankings and
power rank them right now. Let's do it.
Well, let's put up the teams who Seattle, I'll throw in there as being in purgatory. We agree the Steelers, the Cowboys.
The Colts are one of the most purgatory teams in the NFL, period. They just can't get out of purgatory. They have a fetish for statuesque 30-year-old white guys on their third or fourth team playing quarterback for them.
Are the Saints too bad to be in purgatory?
The Saints are in cap hell.
Hell. Yeah.
Yo, is Chase Young the new Jadeveon Clowney?
Why are they doing these deals?
I want to be respectful to Clowney because I think Clowney is a really fucking good player and had a good career.
I want to be clear because when I saw that the Young deal and the Justin Reed deals broke, I laughed. And those are good football players.
Yeah.
Justin Reed
Reed has championship pedigree. Like, he's a dog.
But what the hell are the Saints doing? Like, who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
It's like your broke friend who shows up with new shoes, and you're just like, what are you doing?
It's so irresponsible.
What is the point
it's so irresponsible
of any of this?
Yeah, these are Prada. Okay.
Cool.
So I think they're up there.
Where are you going in those shoes?
I think they're up there. I think Tampa escaped being in purgatory by nailing the Baker Mayfield thing.
Miami
is kind of purgatory.
Yeah,
they're kind of purgatory
right now. Yeah.
So yeah, this is the Purgatory Club. We'll rank them. Give us your rankings at home. Put them in the comments. All right, so I got a fun one for you. Who do you think is going to be this year's Zack Baun?
Oh, I love that. Like the under the radar free agent signing that ended up being
changes everything.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking at all the signings here.
Yeah, because I don't have an answer right now. This is a one-way. This is a true one-way question.
Okay. I did love Poona Ford to the Rams.
I knew you would.
I love Poona Ford. So I'll throw that one in there as a signing that I really liked that I think could be impactful. Okay, I'll throw out. I want to hit your thoughts on this. You mentioned the Bucs. What if Hassan Reddick has a huge bounce back year with Tampa?
He certainly might. I mean, I think what he found out up in New York is like it's hard to fly in any weather as a pass rusher. And, if you're going to sit out most of the year, the rust accumulates. So I think Tampa will be a good destination for him. He's got to be one of the big, and I don't mean this like to be a dick, but he's got to be one of the biggest losers of the last couple of years as far as winners and losers.
Yeah.
As far as like making the right move for their career and that sort of thing, like it just has not worked out. Loses out on a chance to get a ring. Probably.
I think there's a real opportunity though for him to like rebuild Todd Bowles' defense. They've got good defensive tackles. Edge has just been so obviously the need for them for so long.
Great place to play. And I just want to say this one more time. I don't mean the guy's a loser. I think he's a great player.
No.
But it just has not worked out.
It's not a matter of debate.
The moves he's made. I'm going to get some guy saying Chris Long called Hassan Reddick a fucking loser. Nah, the guy is a great pass rusher. I just would have loved to see him in Philly last year. Didn't work out like that. And then the Jets, that whole thing, I mean, was a shit
I got my
show,
answer for you.
Yeah.
I got my answer for you.
You do?
Dre Greenlaw to the Broncos. I loved that one.
Really? So I like that one too. I like really both their
Hufanga too.
I like Hufanga, but you know they both have some injury issues. Maybe Greenlaw's it's just recency bias, but I love Dre Greenlaw. Why do you think he's such a good fit there?
Well, first of all, when he came back, because you played in a couple games at the end of the year, he looked really good.
He did.
So I was like, I don't know if he got a different Achilles from like Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, but he is moving.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a position thing.
Yeah.
I think he is, and this is, I guess, Zack Baun, like he's so underrated in terms of his versatility. He can cover, he can play the run. He's, you know, he got to play next to Fred Warner, and I actually think he obviously benefited from that, but I think he always could be like the dude in a linebacker group. And I think this situation, similar to Philadelphia with Baun joining, I mean, great front, great secondary. They just needed a linebacker to unlock it. So I think he's going to like benefit from being in Vance Joseph's defense.
You know, I mentioned the Josh Palmer thing. I think that could work out pretty well. I also think some of the moves that Chicago has made is, you know, I know that like activity period is going to get you a bunch of good grades in free agency. Like in that, the way it goes always like, hey, that team knocked it out of the park. They signed 3 guards. They brought in, you know, a Dayingbo, who I think actually like could be a sleeper for a guy that shows up next year. And his life just got a lot better. Like really, it really did. Like coming from the defense he was in, I think his production will go up. I think people will be patting him on the back a lot at the end of next year because he's only 2 years removed from a season where he had like 8 sacks, which that 8 sack and up echelon is where I'm like, okay, this guy has the ability to be an absolute dude. If we could just get that out of him again in Chicago, he's going to play with Montez Sweat and Grady Jarrett and, you know, better corners and the whole thing. Like they play a lot of soft zone, like vanilla shit in Indy. I think as a rusher, his life's going to improve a great deal. And I'm falling for it with the Bears. I really am. Like,
are you?
Yeah, I really am. Like, you know, people have a hard time. You know how this is when you have a take and your take evolves and changes and you had a draft take and then I have a Caleb Williams in the NFL take. My draft take was be careful moving heaven and earth to go draft a guy and be sure that he's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes when you're not even sure who's the best quarterback in the draft year to year. And that turned out to be true last year. Okay. But there's still a lot of time for Caleb Williams. I think he impressed the hell out of me last year in a lot of ways. Yeah. Obviously you want to see better deep ball accuracy. You want to see him grasp the offense, although that offense was a total shitstorm. And, I couldn't wait for his sake for the year to end from a protection standpoint, the whole thing. I think this year they take a big step forward. And it's not just the Ben Johnson thing. I think a lot of it has to do with I saw him in some really adverse situations last year lead and have that mindset that I think is going to do him good when it all turns around. And I think this is a year they make a little jump, man. I love what they did on the offensive line. I'm falling for the activity thing, right? Like, although I'm kind of curious, like if Joe Tooney at 30, what is he, 32?
Yeah.
Is going to be the same player. Like, but I love Dahlman. You go out and get Jonah Jackson. Like, and when you look around the NFC North, there's a lot of uncertainty, in my opinion. Has Detroit really reigned long enough to just be like, hey, it's their division? You know, like it'd be one thing if their season ended and they lost the shootout to like the best team in the league, but they get thumped by the Commanders. Like, doesn't that send some messages to the people in your division that you can be aggressive and try to win this division this year?
I mean, the brain drain is going to be really tough. I liked, by the way, a lot of Detroit's moves in free agency. I thought the DJ Reed
pickup.
But I think losing both your coordinators, people can't sleep on, especially when they're both really good.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like Philly where like they fired and people want, you know, it's going to be difficult for them. And to your point about Chicago, I guess some of the signings I question a little bit on not Odimbo I like because I think he's a really high upside player, but the intention of just saying we're going to double down on the inside of this offensive line. This is what our coach cares about coming from Detroit. I like that. And I also I personally feel like I saw enough out of Caleb Williams to be excited.
Yeah.
There were just certain games where I thought even if they lost, he flashed, he carried the team in big moments. I like the way he handled it, by the way, mentally, the way he talked, the way he led. I thought giving him a veteran center, that's really what I wanted for him in free agency, because I just felt like too much was on his shoulders last year as a rookie. And if they can take a little bit off, I think he can play a little more free.
And Ben said it. He's never had a quarterback who can throw on the run like that. I mean, like, he is really good outside the pocket, moving the pocket. I mean, like, really impressive. Okay, one or two more things for you. Trey Hendrickson. Supposedly the price for Trey Hendrickson is ridiculous, even for teams willing to pay the guy. That's per Diana Rossini, our good friend at The Athletic. What the hell is going on with this? And do you see a good fit for him?
I mean, I see a lot of fits.
Yeah, but like with the capital they seem to be asking for, like, who's actually going to get aggressive and go get this guy?
Well, like the Commanders, I was criticizing. I felt like they haven't done enough on defense. That would be the natural spot to me where they have the flexibility to pay him.
No, man, they just signed Beatrice Wise, my dog from New England.
They gave up draft picks in the Tunsil trade, though, so I don't know if they'd be willing to like completely get rid of all their draft picks here. Yeah. That was a team that jumped out to me. The Pats were another team, although they've spent a lot on defense now already, as a team that had money that needed edge help. The Bears were, but they've also spent draft picks. I don't know. Like, it's kind of crazy to me that they're asking for a lot, because I think the number of suitors is rapidly decreasing.
Yeah, I saw a funny Reddit comment. I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was like, yeah, the Bengals only know the value of their players when they're shipping them out the door. And that seems to be the case. Maybe the resolution is they just pay them. They see they can't get what they want for them. I would have thought Philly would have been a suitor. I thought Philly was going to be all over the Myles Garrett thing. That was something that selfishly I really wanted to happen. It obviously didn't happen because everybody has a price, right? But Trey, like, that's a different conversation. I got a lot of respect for Trey. I mean, he's an absolute dog, but like, you give up that kind of capital from what it sounds like for a Myles Garrett. I don't know if you do it for a 30-plus-year-old Trey. I think Trey could be a real luxury for a team, but until I know what the haul they're asking for is, I can't say for sure. But you can kind of see that market shrinking a little bit if the compensation is really through the roof.
When the Pats still have so much money.
Pats have a ton of money.
Just looking about pulling up the cap space. I mean, that would be pretty nasty. Trey, Milton Williams, Barmore. They bring in Landry, Keon White. Ooh.
I love Keon White, and I love Milton Williams. So, all right, last one. How about a player that a fan base really is going to miss? And it doesn't have to be the best player of all time, but somebody that left their team this week, and you're like, yo, the fan base feels this. And you can't pick a Seahawk because that's too close to home.
Okay. I think that, Greenlaw, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say Greenlaw.
Him, but that's one. I think they're going to miss him. And I think his absence was felt in his injury, right? Because, that really showed.
Rams are going to miss Michael Hoyt. Fans love Michael Hoyt.
Is he going to get paid like a corner or a linebacker? Okay. So I think the Chargers will miss Puna. Sorry to keep repeating guys I've already talked about, but that is one. I'll throw this out. I mean, Patrick McCarry has been pretty damn good for the Ravens over the last 2 years. I think they still had an incredible free. Like, I think keeping Stanley at the price they did was a huge win. But he has quietly been a very good and versatile player for them over the years, and he's the kind of player you don't miss until he's gone.
Oh, no question. When you're like, yo, there's nobody on this roster that can play that guard spot for us in a pinch, or, he played some tackle for them, and obviously Rosengarten turned out to be a player, so that's why he slid inside. But, yeah, I was going to throw C.J. Gardner-Johnson in there. Like, I don't know, because when the fans love you, and 2 years ago you were like, fuck Philly, it's the worst place on earth. Like, You got something over him, man. And I don't blame fans for loving CJ Gardner-Johnson. I loved his energy in Philly. I thought he was a leader in that room. Like, leaders come in different shapes and sizes, and they have different roles. And I think for him, it wasn't necessarily the guy that was doing bed check for the younger players, but he's the type of guy that, like, he gets the other guys to play like missiles. And I think Houston's secondary is one of the most fun groups to watch in the NFL.
Ooh.
That defense at home, you talk about like headhunting, and I don't mean like some bounty shit. I just mean like guys are out there trying to make you feel their presence. Like, that is a whole room full of those guys, and he will make them even more that
right
way.
In. But like, who's blocking?
Who's blocking for CJ Stroud? Interesting. I don't know do they not feel real bullish about this year? Like, I know it's a math move.
Yeah, like, it's defensible in a vacuum, the Tunsil trade, right? And certainly moving Kenyon Green, like, who was not very good. Tunsil too, he was a little bit declining, had a lot of penalties, whatever. But you got nothing now, like nothing. So that's putting a lot of faith in your front office to use those draft picks. That's all I'll say.
Maybe the offensive line coach was so bad, and we don't know. Like, sometimes in an NFL building, like, there's a truth that's so evident to everybody, and just people on the outside have no idea. Like, maybe that was such a bad thing that they know with certainty that it's going to improve no matter who they have in there. I know they slid Fisher out there last year. Maybe he's your left tackle. Titus Howard can play different spots. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be pretty, but maybe just by some good old-fashioned knowing where the fuck to get lined up, they're going to improve. I hope.
The crazy thing about that whole situation, it wasn't just the line, right? It was like the whole operation was, you watched them like just so unprepared for everything that defenses threw at them, from blitzes to game. Like, they looked like everybody involved, including the quarterback, who I like, looked completely surprised.
Yo, the most Houston Texans moment of the entire season was Titus Howard grabbing the football from CJ Stroud. That was the most Houston Texans offense moment of 2024. I'll never forget that. I still don't know what the fuck happened. And yeah, that was kind of the way the year went. So hopefully they'll figure it out. But Mina, thank you so much for your time. You can't get this kind of analysis anywhere else, especially not from anybody this good at Jeopardy. And we love having you on. Hopefully you come back soon.
Good to see you, man. Good to catch up. We got to talk about these edge rushers in the draft soon.
Oh, I got to learn about them first.
What is up? It's the Butter King, dairy expert. This episode of the Greenlight Podcast is brought to you by Daya Pizza, featuring dairy-free cheese, now made with Daya Oat Cream Blend. Let's talk about FOMO. Fear of missing dairy. It's real. We've all had it. The Butter King has certainly had it. I know when you hear about dairy-free cheese, you get a little skeptical, especially if you're a cheese and butter lover like me. But Daya's set out to create the ooeyest, gooeyest, dairy-free cheese pizza there is, with absolutely no trade-offs. Daya pizzas are dairy-free and still deliver the rich, savory taste and total satisfaction that everyone craves and demands when looking for a frozen pizza to take home. Daya pizzas hit all the marks. Thin, crispy crust, flavorful toppings, including meatless options that taste meaty, and cheese that's rich, stretchy, and melts just like dairy, all thanks to their innovative Daya Oat Cream Blend. Daya has cured my FOMO, and now you don't have to fully commit to a dairy-free lifestyle to enjoy it. Thank God. So next time I'm in the great state of Wisconsin, home to a lot of great dairy products, I might actually trick everyone and have some dairy-free cheese pizza. Make your next pizza night FOMO free with Daya. To learn more about Daya, please visit www.dayafoods.com. Check them out on Instagram and TikTok, or visit any major retailer across the U.S., including Whole Foods, Kroger, and Walmart. Coming soon to select Publix and Sprouts.